So, everyone's playing Final Fantasy. Yes! That's really good for me and my YouTube channel. So I should probably make a video. Rule number one when playing Final Fantasy is that you need to understand you are gonna see a lot of orange circles. There's an orange circle right there. Yup, another orange circle. This is basically an orange circle. Yup, orange circle. And another orange circle. Basically, my point is, every AoE attack on the ground is going to be telegraphed in one form or another by a giant indicator on the floor. And if it isn't, that's because it not being telegraphed is the mechanic. Or you're in higher level content where you aren't allowed to have indicators. Why do I mention all these ground indicators? Because, and this is really important, enemy attacks snapshot whenever they finish casting. What does that mean? If you aren't out of the ground indicator by the time it disappears, or before the enemy's cast bar finishes, then the attack will hit you, regardless of whether or not you were standing in the animation or not. For example, see this orange circle? It's telegraphing the attack this thing is going to do. And look, I was in the circle, but I was out of the animation, but I still get hit. And it doesn't matter if you're a mile away from the attack, it will still hit you. Coming from WoW, this is probably the #1 most annoying mechanic WoW refugees will have to deal with. I know it was when I started playing, but this is also usable in your favor. For example, if the cast bar finishes and you are outside of the attack, then you can just walk into the animation and nothing will happen, allowing you to play much more proactively. And this rule applies to every single thing in this game. Places you need to stand, places you don't need to stand, places you need to stand to resolve mechanics, player spells. This game snapshots everything, so try to keep that in mind. Speaking of other mechanics, there are plenty of universal mechanics that share a similar telegraph regardless of what fight you are on that basically mean the exact same thing no matter what. For example, these are all stack markers. No matter what, you want to stack up with the group in these. Some are lines, some are on objects. Just stand on the stack marker. Then we have what the community refers to as towers. A tower is a stack marker on the ground that needs to be stood in. They're called towers because it looks like a tower. But the community also calls basically every mechanic where you need someone to stand somewhere on the map a tower mechanic. There are towers everyone needs to be in one of, towers certain amount of people need to stand in, towers that need to just be touched by a certain amount of people. Basically, stand in the tower. Don't, however, stand on someone with a giant red marker above their head. They have a spread mechanic. Unless it's a fight whose mechanic is specifically to break that rule and we're getting too dank. Just walk away from the giant red marker. Also, we can't forget the player's own universal major ability, can we? I'm talking limit breaks. That's right, baby. The super attack that one player gets to use at the cost of your limit meter. Limit break 1 and 2, forget about them. They suck. If you use them, you're trash. But, you know, they're kind of the same thing as LB3, just weaker. Except for healer LB 1 and 2. Those are actual garbage that needs to be buffed because they're absolutely worthless, and if you use them, you're bad. Healer LB3, though, is a mass combat res that returns every single player to full health and life.
Do it now! Yes! Let's go!
The Tank Limit Break 3 is a raid-wide super mitigation ability, which in some fights is required to survive an attack, and the DPS LB3 is a ton of damage. The caster one is a ton of damage in a big circle, the ranged physical is a ton of damage in a straight line, and the melee is a ton of damage, single target, but slightly more damage than the other two. And by slightly I mean a lot more damage. So yeah, that's a lot of universal mechanics, and if you're a black mage, you're probably thinking, wow, that's a whole lot of bullshit. I don't want to move out of those. I just spam Fire 4. Well, you poor black mage fool. Movement, and doing it perfectly, is probably the most pronounced part of Final Fantasy XIV boss fights. Matter of fact, Mr. Black Mage, your job has probably one of the easiest rotation in the game for a DPS. Stand still, spam Fire 4 till you're out of mana. Go into Ice form, get more mana, use cooldowns, rinse and repeat. But All your hard-hitting Fire 4 spells that you just want to stand still and cast over and over and over again have super long cast times.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
So figuring out how to perfectly move around the arena while still having 100% optimal uptime makes your simple spam fire, stand still in ley lines, unga bunga job turn into the galaxy brain level. Sit here, cast 2 spells, instant gas Xenoglossy, warp over to the healer out of a mechanic, cast triple threat, use mana font, refresh astral fire, you just proc fire 3, use it to instant cast to move out of a mechanic, use sharp cast thunder, get a proc for later in the fight, etc., etc. Moving around the arena and doing your damage rotation is like playing Dance Dance Revolution and Guitar Hero at the same time, so abuse movement as much as possible. Move into those giant animations that do nothing because you were snapshotted outside. Make use of your instant cast spells to move around and weave in more abilities. Stand on the hair of a safe space for optimal uptime, and learn how to slide cast. What's slide casting? Well, if you move when your spell is this close to finishing and move just a little bit, and bam, 100% uptime, and you moved a little bit. It might not look like a lot of movement, but when you're one step away from being in a mechanic and not being a mechanic, it makes a big difference. So become the Dance Dance Revolution masters that you were born to be. Also, when it comes to players, they also have snapshotting. What does that mean? How does it work? Well, it is incredibly simple, but hard to explain. So pay attention. When you apply a damage over time spell onto an enemy, the game checks. How strong are you? What buffs do you have? What bonuses do you have to your damage? And this bonus damage is added to your damage over time spell. Also, your damage over time spell will stay that strong no matter if the bonuses wear off. So for example, if I'm a samurai, I have a dot called Higenbana, which lasts 1 minute. And I have a buff called Hisatsu Kaiten, which makes my next attack do more damage. If I use Hisatsu Kaiten before I apply Higenbana, then Higenbana does the bonus damage provided for its entire 1 minute duration. And all damage increases work like this. Potions, devotion, trick attack, battle litany, chain stratagem, etc. But why does this matter? Damage meters are incredibly hard to install and frowned upon by Square. And you just trying to indoctrinate people into your elitist max damage coalition? No. All the things I've mentioned, like abusing movement, snapshotting, having 100% optimal uptime, Square Enix designs their bosses with you using these higher techniques in mind. For example, every single Extreme, Unreal, Savage, and Ultimate boss has a hard enrage. At least everyone in Shadowbringers. What does that mean? If you don't do enough DPS, you will just not kill the boss. It'll kill you first. It'll do its big fat attack and everybody will die. And the game has a ton of punishing mechanics that can cause you to wipe to this hard enrage. For example, in E10S, if you get hit by pretty much any mechanic, sure, it probably won't kill you, but it will give you a minute of half damage. If you die, sure, you can get combat resurrected and keep progressing the fight, but you get resurrection sickness for a minute and will do less damage. Not to mention the amount of time you were dead, doing 0% damage. Oh, and you just died again? Then enjoy your minute of super res sickness. So yeah, snapshotting your dots, it helps. Smiley face, bottom text. But for now, I think that's enough for the basics to get you started on mastering the game. I don't want to flood you with information. If this video does well, I'll make another one. Why not? And who knows, maybe I'll do it more selective, like tank mechanics, healer mechanics, or you could just go watch my summoner guide if you want to be a good dragon edgelord. So, please subscribe. The dopamine I receive from subscribers is more powerful than anything else in my life. Thanks. Peace out.